Libra partner talked about fairness while pocketing more. I balanced the books in front of all. The fluorescent hum of the Sterling Bay Capitol office on Wacker Drive was a constant, low-level thrum against Sarah Jensen's quiet intensity. It was early spring 2012, and the city outside her 35th floor window was slowly shedding its winter coat, the gray concrete of the Loop gradually yielding to the first tentative greens along the Chicago River. Sarah, then 34, thrived in this environment. She was not the flamboyant type, no flashy suits or boisterous laughter echoing through the trading floor. Her domain was the meticulous world of data, algorithms, and client portfolios. She was a senior investment analyst, a quiet powerhouse who could dissect a company's financials with surgical precision, often spotting trends and risks long before her more vocal colleagues. Her days began before the sun even kissed Lake Michigan, usually by 6 a.m., fueled by a strong coffee from her favorite independent shop in Lincoln Park, where her modest but impeccably organized apartment was located. She'd take the CTA Brown Line south, watching the city awaken, mentally preparing for the day's market opening. At Sterling Bay, she managed a significant portion of the firm's high-net-worth client portfolios, consistently outperforming benchmarks, a fact that earned her a quiet respect, though not always the loudest accolades. Her partner, Mark Thorne, a charismatic man 10 years her senior, was the face of their joint ventures. He had the charm, the polished presentation skills, and the easy rapport with clients that Sarah lacked. He'd brought her on 4 years ago, admiring her analytical prowess. Their partnership on paper was 60/40 in his favor, reflecting his seniority and initial capital investment, a split Sarah had accepted, trusting his repeated assurances of shared growth and future reevaluation. Mark, a self-proclaimed Libra, often spoke about balance, fairness, and the importance of equity, not just in financial terms, but in professional relationships. His office, larger and boasting an impressive view of the lake, often hosted client dinners, his voice a smooth baritone weaving tales of prudent investment and shared prosperity. Sarah believed him, admired his ability to command a room, and saw their dynamic as complementary. She provided the substance, he provided the stage. Her life outside work was equally unassuming. Evenings were often spent reading industry journals, tending to her small rooftop herb garden, or occasionally meeting a close friend for dinner in River North. She drove a sensible Honda Civic, meticulously maintained. She wasn't driven by ostentation, but by the quiet satisfaction of a job well done, of helping her clients secure their financial futures. She'd poured her life, her intellect, and every ounce of her professional integrity into Sterling Bay Capital. It was more than a job, it was a significant part of her identity, a testament to her dedication. The first tremor of unease began subtly, like a hairline crack in a vast, seemingly solid structure. It was a minor discrepancy in the monthly profit and loss statements from a large technology fund they co-managed. Sarah, cross-referencing her internal models, noticed a slight variance, not enough to trigger an alarm, but enough to make her pause. She attributed it to a new accounting software patch, a common occurrence. A few weeks later, a quarterly bonus payout was slightly lower than her projections, again, explainable by market fluctuations or a revised performance metric. Mark, when she casually mentioned it, waved off her concerns with a smile. "Just the usual volatility, Sarah. Trust the numbers. We're still crushing it." His confident dismissal was enough to placate her. She was, after all, a numbers person, and numbers, she believed, didn't lie. But the hairline cracks began to spiderweb. Small deviations became slightly larger ones. A client's annual statement showed a marginally different management fee structure than what she had explicitly negotiated and documented. Another client's portfolio return, while excellent, was lower than her calculations by a persistent, almost deliberate margin. Her gut, a sense she had learned to trust implicitly over years of high-stakes financial analysis, began to churn. She started spending late nights meticulously auditing her own work, then expanding to cross-reference the official firm records with her personal tracking systems, which she'd built from scratch in sophisticated Excel models over the years. This wasn't just about her, it was about her clients, her reputation, her integrity. The true moment of betrayal arrived not with a bang, but with a quiet, sickening thud. It was early July, humid and sweltering, a typical Chicago summer day. Mark had just closed a monumental deal, securing a multi-million-dollar institutional investor, Midwest Pensions Group. A client Sarah had spent 6 months cultivating, meticulously crafting proposals, and navigating complex regulatory hurdles. Mark had swooped in for the final, charming handshake, as was his style. The firm was ecstatic. During a celebratory partners' luncheon at a high-end steakhouse in the Loop, amidst clinking glasses and boisterous congratulations, Mark raised a toast to fairness, partnership, and shared success. He spoke passionately about how every member of the team contributed, how their collective efforts were the bedrock of Sterling Bay's prosperity. He even singled out Sarah for her invaluable analytical backbone. Later that evening, back in the quiet sanctuary of her office, Sarah pulled up the internal commission reports for the Midwest Pensions Group deal. Her heart began to pound a slow, heavy rhythm against her ribs. The deal's total commission was a staggering $2.5 million. Based on their agreed 60/40 split, her share should have been $1 million. The report, however, showed her allocation as $400,000. Not only was it less than half of her actual share, but it was also a flagrant disregard for their stated agreement. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't a clerical error. This wasn't volatility. This was outright theft. She dug deeper, her fingers flying across the keyboard, fueled by a mixture of adrenaline and ice-cold fury. She accessed historical internal records, cross-referencing every major deal they'd closed in the last 3 years. She uncovered a pattern, a carefully constructed system of small, insidious adjustments to her equity allocations, disguised within complex financial reporting codes, always shifting the balance subtly in Mark's favor. He hadn't just taken a chunk, he'd systematically siphoned off hundreds of thousands, if not millions, over years. The Libra who preached fairness had been quietly picking her pocket, using his position and her trust as his personal ATM. He had used his charm, his public declarations, and her own quiet nature against her. The emotional collapse was swift and brutal. Sarah felt a physical ache, a searing pain in her chest, as if a vital organ had been ripped out. She stared at the numbers on her screen, the irrefutable proof of his betrayal, and tears, hot and uncontrollable, streamed down her face. Not just for the money, though that was significant, but for the profound violation of trust. For the years she had poured her life into this partnership, believing in their shared vision. She felt foolish, naive, utterly exposed. She spent the next few days in a fog, holed up in her apartment, the vibrant city outside a blur. Her phone buzzed with work emails, but she couldn't bring herself to respond. She ordered takeout, stared at the television without seeing it, and replayed Mark's confident smiles, his flattering words, his fairness rhetoric, all now twisted into grotesque mockeries. She felt a burning need to confront him, to scream, to expose him right then and there. But then, the cold, analytical part of her mind, the part that had made her so successful, kicked in. She knew Mark. He was charismatic, well-connected, and ruthless. A direct confrontation would likely be spun against her, turning her into the emotional, disgruntled partner. He would deny everything, fabricate counter-evidence, and use his network to discredit her, burying her professionally. He had built his reputation on an image of integrity. He would protect it at all costs, even if it meant destroying hers. The despair slowly solidified into a cold, hard resolve. She wouldn't just get her money back. She would balance the books in a way that truly mattered, publicly and undeniably, hitting him where it hurt most. His carefully cultivated image, his professional standing, his very self-perception as the arbiter of fairness. She had the evidence, painstakingly gathered over years, unknowingly, through her own diligent record-keeping. Her quiet competence, her love for the intricate details of financial data, which Mark had dismissed as her quirk, was now her most potent weapon. Her plan began to form, precise and intricate, like a complex financial model. She had access to every digital nook and cranny of Sterling Bay Capital's systems. She knew the backdoors, the hidden reports, the archived data that Mark, in his arrogance, might have thought were beyond the reach of casual scrutiny. He was good at manipulating the top-level reports, but he hadn't accounted for Sarah's encyclopedic knowledge of the underlying architecture. She started working from home, telling colleagues she was dealing with a family emergency. Every night, fueled by black coffee and a relentless drive, she painstakingly compiled every piece of evidence. Bank transfers, internal ledger adjustments, altered equity statements, manipulated commission reports, all cross-referenced with client communications and her own original deal sheets. She built a comprehensive, unassailable case. Each keystroke was a small act of defiance, a quiet chisel against the edifice of his deceit. She realized the power of visual evidence. People believed what they saw. A simple verbal accusation could be dismissed, but incontrovertible data, presented clearly and concisely, was a different beast entirely. Her goal wasn't just to expose him, but to leave him no room for denial, no ground for counterargument. She prepared a presentation, not for a board meeting, but for the firm's annual partners summit, scheduled for late September at the Peninsula Hotel Ballroom, a grand, high-profile event where Mark was always the star, the orator, the visionary. It was the perfect stage. To solidify her position, Sarah quietly contacted a forensic accountant for a personal audit, she claimed. She wanted an independent pair of eyes on her findings, ensuring every piece of her evidence was ironclad and legally sound. The accountant, a seasoned veteran named Marcus Thorne, no relation to Mark, was initially skeptical but grew increasingly impressed by the sheer volume and meticulousness of her documentation. "Sarah," he'd said, his voice low, "this isn't just shoddy accounting. This is systematic fraud. You've built a bomb here." Sarah simply nodded. The bomb was nearly ready. She also discreetly sought preliminary legal advice from an attorney specializing in corporate malfeasance, carefully phrasing her questions to avoid premature disclosure, making sure she understood the legal ramifications and protected herself from potential blowback. She was building an impenetrable fortress around her evidence and her position. The day of the annual Sterling Bay Capital Partners Summit arrived. September 21st, 2012. The ballroom at the Peninsula was abuzz with activity. Partners, investors, and key clients from across the country were networking, their laughter and confident chatter filling the opulent space. Sarah, dressed in a sharp, dark suit, felt an unusual calm. Her hands weren't shaking. Her heart was steady. She walked with purpose, greeting a few familiar faces, her expression composed. Mark, oblivious, was in his element, holding court near the stage, his booming laugh echoing. He caught her eye, gave her a casual nod and a fleeting smile, the same smile that had once disarmed her, now a trigger for a cold resolve. The morning proceeded with the usual reports: market outlooks, performance reviews, strategic initiatives. Then it was Mark's turn. He strode to the podium, a confident swagger in his step, and launched into his signature address. The ethical compass of Sterling Bay, navigating growth with integrity and fairness. He spoke eloquently about shared values, collective success, and the transparent principles that guided their firm. He projected slick, professionally designed slides filled with inspiring quotes and impressive growth charts. He emphasized the crucial role of equitable partnerships and the trust clients placed in them. Sarah sat in the third row, her laptop nestled on her lap, connected to the hotel's secure network. She watched him, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. He was unknowingly digging his own grave with every word. After a thunderous applause for Mark's speech, the CEO, a stoic but fair-minded woman named Alina Vance, took the stage. "Next," she announced, "we have Sarah Jensen, who will present an in-depth financial performance review, a deeper dive into our operational efficiency." Sarah rose, laptop in hand, and walked to the podium. A few murmurs rippled through the room. Sarah was respected, but she wasn't known for public speaking. She plugged in her laptop, adjusted the microphone, and took a deep breath. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice clear and steady, amplified by the sound system. "Following Mark's insightful address on our firm's ethical compass, I'd like to provide a granular look at how those principles translate into our financial realities." She began with a standard performance review, her initial slides displaying legitimate, publicly verifiable data. The audience settled, expecting a detailed, perhaps slightly dry but informative presentation. She covered client acquisition, portfolio growth, and market share, using the firm's official figures, acknowledging Mark's contributions. Then she subtly shifted gears. "As you know," she continued, "the bedrock of any successful partnership is transparency. And in finance, transparency means absolute clarity in our internal allocations and distributions." She clicked to a new slide. This was the first of her carefully curated reveals. The slide showed two columns, side by side. The left column was labeled Official Partner Equity Split, as reported by Mark Thorne. The right column, in stark contrast, was labeled Actual Partner Equity Contributions and Distributions, Forensic Audit. A low murmur started in the room. The numbers were drastically different. Her own name, Sarah Jensen, was highlighted. In the left column, her percentage share was consistent with the 40% agreed upon, or even slightly less due to Mark's adjustments. But in the right column, reflecting her actual contribution of capital, client revenue, and deal flow, her percentage was significantly higher, often surpassing 50%, while Mark's, despite his stated 60%, was sometimes as low as 35–40%. She moved to the next slide, her voice unwavering. "Let's look at specific client accounts." This slide featured the Midwest Pensions Group deal, the one that had triggered her investigation. Again, two columns. Reported commission allocation for Sarah Jensen, $400,000. And next to it, calculated commission allocation based on partnership agreement and direct contribution, $1 million. The discrepancy, clear and shocking, hung in the air. Sarah didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She simply presented the data, coolly, clinically, as if discussing a quarterly earnings report. "These figures," she explained, gesturing to the screen, "are derived from cross-referencing our internal database logs, email correspondences, contractual agreements, and the firm's external payment gateways. We've traced every dollar, every adjustment, every altered code entry." She showed a timeline of systemic equity adjustments, a graph illustrating a consistent, gradual downward trend in her allocated share over the past 3 years, correlating precisely with an upward spike in Mark's. She detailed how specific coding errors, always beneficial to Mark, had been subtly introduced into their proprietary accounting software. She even displayed archived chat logs where Mark had instructed junior accountants to make specific, unrecorded corrections to allocation sheets. The room had fallen silent. All eyes were on the screen, then on Mark, who sat rigid in his seat, his face a mask of dawning horror, his usual confident smile completely gone. He looked pale, almost sickly. The Libra who championed fairness was caught, nakedly exposed, on the very stage he had just used to preach his virtues. Sarah clicked to her final slide. It simply stated in bold, sans serif font, "Balancing the books." Below it, a single sentence. "As a partner, I believe in transparency and fairness." These numbers, unfortunately, tell a different story about how that principle has been applied within our partnership. "I believe it's time we truly balance the books, financially and ethically." She then calmly looked out at the stunned faces. "I have compiled a comprehensive report," she said, holding up a thick binder. "Copies are available for all partners and board members. It includes all supporting documentation, verified by independent forensic analysis." With that, she stepped back from the podium, leaving the silence to stretch, heavy with implications. Chaos erupted. Murmurs escalated into angry shouts. Eleanor Vance, the CEO, rose, her face grim. "Mark Thorne," she stated, her voice cutting through the din, "I believe you have some explaining to do. This firm operates on trust and integrity." Mark, finally finding his voice, tried to stand, a desperate, "This is preposterous. A misunderstanding. Sarah, you've clearly misconstrued the data." But his words were weak. His usual charisma evaporated in the face of the undeniable evidence projected on the screen behind him. No one was listening. The other partners, many of whom had felt quietly undercut or overshadowed by Mark's aggressive style, now saw the full extent of his deceit. The fairness he so loudly proclaimed had been a calculated shield for his avarice. The consequences were swift and devastating. An emergency board meeting was called immediately. Mark was placed on administrative leave, his access to firm systems revoked. The forensic report Sarah provided was irrefutable. Within days, Mark was terminated, and a formal investigation, leading to legal charges of fraud and embezzlement, began. His professional reputation, meticulously built over decades, crumbled to dust. The Libra was publicly revealed as a thief, his name becoming synonymous with corporate betrayal in the Chicago financial world. His personal assets were frozen, and he faced not only legal battles but the humiliation of public disgrace and potential prison time. The firm itself reeled from the scandal. Client confidence was shaken, and a few high-profile investors pulled their funds. But Sarah, the quiet analyst, became an unlikely hero. Many of her clients, seeing her integrity and thoroughness, not only stayed but praised her for exposing the truth. Other partners, initially shocked, soon rallied around her, recognizing her courage and the depth of her analytical skill. Eleanor Vance, the CEO, publicly commended Sarah for her unwavering commitment to the firm's true ethical standards. Sarah, however, felt no joy, only a profound sense of weary closure. The revenge wasn't sweet. It was necessary, a painful rebalancing of a ledger that had been deliberately skewed. She had been forced to tear down what she had helped build, to expose a man she had once trusted implicitly. The scars of betrayal remained, but so did a newfound strength, a sharper, more resolute edge to her character. She understood now that true fairness wasn't just spoken, it was meticulously, relentlessly demanded. In the aftermath, Sarah was offered a greatly enhanced partnership, with full control over her client portfolios and a leading role in overhauling the firm's internal financial transparency protocols. She accepted, not out of ambition, but out of a renewed sense of responsibility. She knew what it took to protect not just her own interests, but the integrity of the institution she believed in. She still rose early, still took the brown line, but now, as she looked out at the Chicago skyline, she saw not just the city, but a testament to the quiet power of truth, and the enduring, if sometimes painful, necessity of balancing the books, no matter the cost. Her Honda Civic still sat in her parking spot, unassuming, but inside, the woman who drove it was anything but. She was a force, forged in betrayal, now navigating a future built on unwavering vigilance and an unshakable commitment to real equity. Total characters, including spaces, 21,537,